And welcome to the Confound Millennial, starring Steven Stirvin Michaels and featuring special guest, my buddy, Laron October. What's
Hey,
up,
hey,
man?
how you guys doing? Thank you for having me on the show. Looking forward to chatting with you, Stephen, as a grown man and not as a 16-year-old that I remember.
Yeah, not the, oh man, dude, I hate even looking back on that. Like, thank you, Laron. I want to say this all these years later for putting up with what I was back then. You're a strong man, you have strong will. I would have smacked the crap out of me if I was you on several occasions. But you got it.
Hey, that's what being a youth pastor and working with teenagers is you always have a whole bunch of different kids and if you the people who walk into a job like that and really want to spend their life or spend a time of their life working with students is you just have to know that kids are just developing and they're just learning and developing who they are and walking through their own problems and walking through parent problems and your job is just to love them and care for them and put up with them and have fun with them and teach them a little bit about morals and life and that's a job. And sometimes there's kids that are rough. There's sometimes there's kids that you have no issues with and it's just part of the job. you know
It's like those years, that I spent in that youth group. Like it's still, that's where I developed like my taste in music. That's where even though as an adult you change and you grow into another person, there's always like we were talking about music a second ago before we started recording. Like you always go back and like I'll be listening to some Paramore and I'll just get hit with all these memories of the friends that I used to hang with back in that time.
Yeah, it is. It's the nostalgia that it reminds you of looking back at music or looking back at pictures, and it takes you back to a certain time. And that's what I was listening to last night. I was listening to a lot of punk rock, and so right about 15, 16 was on punk rock face. It didn't change the way I dressed. I didn't dress like a punk rocker, but I listened to a lot of listened to a lot of music and just playing those music again, those songs again instantly dropped me back, to Laron and some of the friends that he used to have, at 15 or 16, and just doing some dumb stuff, crashing on my friends' couches, just playing video games all night long, kind of, kind of thing. So it's music does that for you. It just kind of brings you back to a moment in time.
Yeah, it's like we've been I live with my cousin and her husband Dirk that comes on the podcast from time to time, and he's been listening to a lot of old punk rock, and it's probably close to the stuff that you were listening to a little before my time. He's closer to your age, and when I was 16, when you knew me, we were telling you we're listening to Skillet, but we're all listening to Disturbed, Avenged Sevenfold, and Five Finger Death Punch behind your back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what I was saying. With students is that they're developing, they're learning who they are, and so you also take what they say with some grain of salt of like I know I'm only getting part of the answer. A lot of times you guys told me about things you listened to and I never really asked.
Oh yeah,
I was like, so you felt the need to defend what you're listening to, but I never really asked. I did. Paramore was never. I think I got out of punk rock before Paramore got famous. So when you guys said you listened to Paramore, I was like, oh, that's cool, but I really didn't. I really listened to their music.
yeah. Like
I had gone from then.
I just remember I was talking yesterday. I was telling Dirk about all the phases that the youth band had gone through, from Taylor leading it and it being kind of older, like '90s Christian music inspired, to Ashley Berry coming in and like, let's just rock out, and me and Eric and Ben jumping off our risers with our guitars, and man, you let us
Yeah.
get away with a lot.
Well, that's the it's funny though. I'm my and we might get into this later, but my job has changed. My role has changed. So now I'm in a position of hiring youth pastors and hiring kids pastors. But yeah, thinking back to those moments, there's the Bridge Church was probably the funnest time that I had as a youth pastor, and I could get into all the different reasons why. But kids were great. You guys were great, and there was a lot of just let you guys do what you wanted, not what you wanted, but within reason. Let you guys
Yeah.
use your gifts and your talents, use the passion because you wanted to be there, you wanted to play music, you wanted to play Christian music, you wanted to do it together. So I was like, yeah, why not? Why would I try to stop that? And I was not a musician, so I couldn't help you guys musically. I just told you when things didn't sound good.
But you did your best.
Go ahead.
You did your best to help us, though.
Yeah, I did. I'll do as much as I could to help, equipment, all that stuff, and to learn. And I just wanted to create a platform for you guys to do what you had a passion to do. And I think a good leader and a good student leader, especially, it's really not about them being in the front or being on a stage. It's really much more about them providing a stage for kids. And I learned that probably about a year after I got to the Bridge, and I started just doing that. I'm like, hey, if you guys, however you want to play music or what you want to do, I want to give you the freedom to do that. I try to give kids the platform to teach, but no one took me up on that offer or to do announcements and stuff. And I allow a few people to do that. But yeah, I think that's a good leader, just kind of allows people to, as a good student leader, just builds an environment for kids to use their gifts and talents. So it was fun. It really was. It was the stuff that you guys did and the creativity that you guys had was fun.
It was really fun times because the friends that I made back then, like I call Caleb Sosby almost every morning on his way to work. Me and Jarrett talk all the time. Savannah Berry comes on the show. Like our artwork was provided by Ashley Berry. Like
Cool.
It's all, even though we might not be around each other like we were, almost every day, being the homeschoolers, just hanging out at the church, trying to find some way to hang out with friends. But we still keep in communication, and we're all pretty much still, that group with a few exceptions, which doesn't happen.
Man, that is awesome.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
I said it doesn't happen often. Like, usually when people grow up, they drift apart, and it surprises me that many of us have stuck together.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of relational equity, a lot of time in that relationship. There's a student that ended up their family came to the church and then leaving probably about a year after they came. They left around the same time I did. It wasn't related, but I remember the kid had a hard time connecting, and the parents always had an issue because they're like, man, like all these kids are so connected, but I feel like my son's always on the outside. And I was like, yes and no. A lot of these kids, they grew up together. There's like, if you're comparing them, they grew up together. They're homeschooled, so they spent a lot of time together. They've been here to church, some of these kids, 5-6 years. And so, they're kind of a close-knit group, but it's not intentional. Not like they're intentionally saying, hey, I don't want to hang out with you. It's just, they don't think about it. Like whenever they go to their friends, their homes, all their parents know each other. So things just are happening. There's not, a lot of times we hung out, there wasn't a plan. It was just like, hey, you want to go grab something to eat, and like, on a Wednesday night or whatever, we just go do something. So there wasn't a plan or an event. And so that parent and that kid just had a hard time with that. And it was that and some other reasons why they ended up leaving. But I tried to explain to them, it's no one is doing it on purpose or trying to push you aside. It's just these kids just grew up and spent a lot of time, and so the only way to get in, the only way to join that, not join the group, but be a part of that group is just you can't show up late and you can't leave early and
Right.
expect them to know who you are, you know. So, but it is cool to hear that you guys are still friends and still connected, because I do think that's very important. And when you find those good friends, you hold on to them, and you hold on to those relationships because they truly do mean a lot. And good friends are hard to come by, because the older you get, the harder it is to make friends. Actually, they're just life, busyness, interest, and back when you're 5 years old or 6 years old, you can knock somebody's door and say, "Hey, you want to come play?" When you're an adult, you knock somebody's door and like, "Hey, you want to go play?" Just weird. So it's just different.
Well, no, the other day I did an interview with a band, and afterwards, one of the guys was like, "Hey, any of y'all play Warzone? Y'all want to add me?" I'm like, "Heck yeah,
Sometimes
man."
you just gotta ask. It is. You just gotta, it's just, I don't know what it was when we were kids, to where I don't know if you didn't develop the fear of rejection yet, or it was just the thing about numbers. It's like, hey, I just ask all the kids in my school to play, and eventually I'll find somebody. But as you got older, you just that fear of rejection kind of sets in, and you're like, yeah, I don't want to put myself out there and no one take me up on an offer or whatever. And so no, I get it, but yeah, once you have a good friends and a good friend group, it really is important. And it takes what I was going to say earlier, before I got sidetracked in my story. With as you were talking about with Caleb and those other guys, and Ashley and Savannah, it takes work on both people's parts to want to continue that relationship. If it's just one person, eventually you get tired, and you don't want to do it anymore. If no one does it, then it just kind of fades over time. But both people are invested in that relationship and care about the other person and want communication, then it builds and it lasts over time. I have a few friends that are like that from college, to where it just we became friends, and we vacation together sometimes, and so that's true friendship. When you could you choose to go and spend money and stay with people, or stay with your families together. So now our kids are growing up together, and they look forward to seeing each other, and so that's that other stage of friendship.
Right. And I was just reminded, there was one guy, I won't mention his name, but we were close back in the youth group days, and I was even the best man at his wedding. And then he never wrote me afterwards. Like, we went a year and a half without talking, and then he sent me a meme, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. Again, that's where that relationship equity just kind of fades. Of it's not mutual, or it is mutual that both of you guys decided, like, yeah, it's not something that you invest a lot of time in, and it just kind of fades and falls off over time, and that's okay. Like I said, life happens. Families, marriage, kids, busyness, work, all that stuff happens and gets in the way. But relationships are very important.
And I just want to, I wasn't going to bring this up, but just in the rare case he's listening, I want to say, I've been doing this podcast for 2 years with my good buddy Chandler, and we got in a, you can tell, he wasn't in the last episode. He's not in this one. We're good friends, and we got in a little disagreement, and I really hope we get over it. And Chandler, I love you, man, if you're listening. And I'm going to call you after this. So if you're listening, you're like, oh, this is when he decided he was going to call me, is that moment.
I'm bummed I didn't get to see Chandler. Does he still have the hair?
Oh,
or is
he's
it
got
a new
the
version
back half of the hair. He's kind of like me, a little follically challenged.
So he just has the back half.
Yeah, he's got a mullet. He's rocking a mullet, and he's got a big old Amish neck beard.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh man, I'm gonna check that out on Facebook.
yeah, the people I live with refer to him as Jebediah.
So I do hope you guys work it out. You guys are good friends. Um,
We will.
always like Chandler was one of those guys. He was quiet in the youth group, but I always knew when he wasn't there. There's just something about him that he wasn't like Jared that was like loud and you can't miss Jared. But Chandler could fade into the background. But I always knew whenever Chandler wasn't there, it just felt like something was missing.
Right. You know,
So,
you didn't
you
hear
guys worked out.
you didn't hear his ankle brace kicking around. You know, you knew he was gone.
I just always remember him wearing, it was like, I was always shocked. I was like, Chandler, it is 20 degrees outside and you're wearing basketball shorts and a t-shirt.
Every youth group's got one.
I've never seen Chandler wear pants, and I've never seen him wear long sleeves.
You'll be proud of him. He wears pants nowadays.
He's grown up. He's grown up. Became an adult.
Work requires it of him.
Yeah. Speaking of my beard, what's going on with that mustache?
Oh yeah, dude, I wanted a curly mustache ever since I was a kid, man. I was like 9 years old and I had a full mirror and I drew with a Sharpie a curly mustache right where I would, look and I'd be like, man, I'm going to have that one day. I acquired my dreams, Laron.
It is. Hey, I'm growing out, I grew out my beard and have grown out pretty long before. And so a couple years ago, I had, back before I left youth ministry, had a really long high top and then big old beard. And so, but I had to clean it up a little bit, start working with adults.
So what's it like? So, obviously, a lot has changed. When did you start working with adults and less with children or, youth? And when did you decide that? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I was with you guys for 3.5 years, got married, and then I went to, Alpharetta area, Johns Creek area. I was there for about 5 years. And in that time, I kind of just, developed, not that I didn't necessarily want to do youth anymore. I just kind of had this conflicting passion to where I wanted to do more of the business side of the church, more of the executive ministry kind of stuff in the church, working with adults. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew that youth ministry was kind of fading out for me. Like when I was at the bridge, I look forward to trips, the lock-ins, all of the fun stuff. I really, every moment at the bridge, it was emotional for me to leave. I kept thinking about it for a long time. I was like, man, did I make the wrong decision? Should I have gone back? For about a year after I left. But just as time went on, the things that I used to do in youth ministry no longer was fun and excitement. I still love kids. I still love hanging out with kids and building relationships. That's actually one part that I still miss is that element of it. The van rides, just grabbing some lunch or dinner or whatever, and just talking with a group of kids. So that kind of stuff I miss. The Wednesday night services or Sunday night services, whatever, I don't miss those at all. Lock-ins, not at all. Youth conferences, not at all. The relationship stuff, yes, but it's about 4 years, I won't say 3.5 years ago, really just had this overwhelming passion that I wanted to do more, but I didn't know what more looked like. So ended up realizing that it was time to leave that church in Johns Creek area. And the church that I actually interned at before I went to college, I connected back with a pastor and his staff and offered me a job there. And I kind of just went over there. I started working with adults. It's kind of funny. I went from working with teenagers to working with the ushers and greeters, which generally are the older people in the church. So I went on like a totally different side. And my wife made a joke. She said the first Sunday I got there, she's like, "You look like a totally different person." Because remember when I said I had had a high top and a beard, and I had joggers on, and that kind of stuff is what I wear because I was working teenagers, long tee. And then I started off with my new job, and I changed all of that because when I was working with adults, with people that were old enough to be my parents or sometimes my grandparents. And so the way I talked to them changed, the way I dressed changed. And it transitioned from that role into what I'm doing now, which is one of the executive pastors there on staff. So I do a lot of that. What I said in the beginning was doing the business of the church. So now I'm doing a lot of the business of the church. I do the admin side of things, the facilities. I went from only managing myself to now I have 7 employees that I manage, which is humbling, and I'm still learning how to manage employees. It's still humbling, but I enjoy all of it. I enjoy all of my job and where I'm at, what I'm doing, and like I said, I'm looking for, now I'm responsible for hiring employees and interviewing people, and it's a learning curve. It's different. It's totally different. People who knew me, back when me and Will just doing dumb stuff, or shooting guns. Or remember that time where we were shooting guns in the apartment complex and the police showed up and we all ran.
And then everybody ran up the hill, and then my fat butt couldn't make it the first try. So I had to duck inside a children's playhouse when the cop came back around.
Yeah, full disclosure for everyone watching, the apartment complex was abandoned. There was nobody there. But yeah, the funny thing is when we ran back and we got back to where I was living, I closed the door. I was like, "Oh crap, where's Steven?" But yeah, the people who knew me back then for doing those things, if they just bumped into me at church sometime, like they wouldn't even probably recognize me and what I'm doing.
How old were you back then?
I was 21. I was 22 when I got to the bridge.
And that's still that's still pretty dang young.
Yeah, I was 22. So now I'm about to be 33. It's just the way I act, and it's just different. Your mindset, over time changes. But think about it. There's some dumb stuff that I used to do. It was like I couldn't believe that my pastor at the bridge had hired me because I was 22. But I had a lot of fun. A whole lot of fun. I remember the places you guys used to take me and just have me drive around. I was like, where in the world am I going? What am I doing in White County, Georgia?
Every 5 seconds, like, are they about to drop me off in the woods and run?
Yeah, so the 22-year-old Laron that you guys do, might be a little different than the way I am now, but it's just, life happens. But yeah, I still have very, very fond memories. I've been up to Cleveland several times since I've left. A few kids have gotten married that I've gone up to be a part of that or perform the ceremony. I've gone up to see people. I remember it was actually really funny. There's a girl that was getting married and I performed the ceremony right across from the Sosby's house, around that area. And I text Chris and I was like, "Hey, are you guys home?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Hey, can I stop by? I'm just in the area." And I walked in and it was kind of like walking back in time because I remember the first time I walked into their house, 22 years old. And it is, there's just always had like this soft spot for Chris and Cindy. I don't know why. I think they always treated me like I was like one of their kids. I was old enough to be one of them, but they're just also great people, great leaders.
It's like one thing about the Sosbys is it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, how long it's been since you've seen them. You're always accepted there.
Yeah, it really was. I just walked in the back door like I was like, "No, do I need to go ring the bell or when I didn't even think about it until after I was sitting down talking to him. I was like, I texted him and I just walked in the back door and said hi. So no, it was good. Like I said, I miss it sometimes.
It's like the last time I talked to, and I need to call her sometime and give her an update, because the last time I talked to her, I don't know if you follow my Facebook page, so this might, shock you a little bit, but was when I was in rehab trying to get out, and I called her and I was like, I don't know where to go. I ain't got nowhere else to go other than here. And she mobilized the Sosby Army to figure out where I can go.
Oh man, it is. It's great people, and there's just sometimes there's just great people to have like that, and it's helped me to there's this moment. I realize this too. This might come in handy for you too as you get older. I was again, like I said, I'm responsible for employees, and so I was talking to somebody about um, so not an issue I was having with an employee, but just things that I'm learning as a leader of like, how do I have better conversation? How do I lead better kind of stuff? And I remember that I used to ask a lot of questions to people I used to work for. I would ask them questions over and over again until I got better at asking questions to where I no longer needed to ask questions. I knew what the policy was, knew what the vision was, knew what the direction was, and I could fill in the gap. And I was like, man, how do I get people to do that? And I realized it's like I am now the person that I used to ask questions of, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're talking about, how great families like the Sosbys are and people who care. And it's like, I realize it's like, there comes a moment to where you just have to decide that's who you want to be. Like there was a moment where Chris and Cindy had to decide, this is who I want to be, and just be that. And I've done that. Like, I have to, there comes a moment where you just have to decide, okay, who am I? How will people see me? What's the story that people are going to share about me? And just decide to live that way and decide to be that.
And, whether or not you realize it, you've been that way for a long time, whether you needed to make that active decision or not. Because I vividly remember one night, one of the worst nights, with, I'm not going to get into it too much, but one of the worst nights of my teenage years involving my family. I just remember I called you crying, dude. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And you're like, come over. Let's shoot some Nazi zombies. Play some Killzone. Like, just de-stress. We'll figure it out, man.
Oh, yeah. It is just, thank you, man. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. And, brought tears to my eyes. I was like, yeah. And it's those things as a student pastor who that's the kind of stuff I miss doing and miss being. And you do all of the other stuff to get to that point to where kids can just call you and it's like, hey, and you build trust with the parents to where for your parents, they know that you're in a safe space. Like, yeah, it's okay. It might not be really good right here, but if you can go with Laron and hang out, then all the better. That's how my youth passion was for me. I used to spend days over at his house, or over the summer when I had nothing to do. I was like, hey, can I just come to your office and I'll do whatever, stuff envelopes, clean up, do whatever. I just wanted to be around him, to get away from the stresses at home.
And it's like, when I'm pretty sure when you took that job, they warned you about a kid named Stirvin and a guy named Will Robb that you would be inheriting.
They did. But you guys, man, I as much as you probably see yourself, the one thing that I saw for you guys is you love being there. You love the youth group, and anything I ask you to do, you would do. So there's very few things you guys would say no to. And there's times where I just needed somebody to hang out with. So I was like, hey, it was just the three of us. I was like, let's go and, let's go somewhere. Let's do something.
Let's go make Will eat wings till he throws up.
That was fun.
Eats
that was a
one
lot
wing.
of fun. Yeah, I think there are some people who are they're probably, I don't know if it's jealousy or envy or what it did, that I think they didn't like how much we hung out.
I know for a fact there was people like I meant to mention this earlier. I was in a weird position in the youth group because I was both part of the in crowd and I was the outcast of the in crowd.
Yeah.
So people would come up to me and they'd be like, they'd complain about this, clique or whatever that they thought was going on. And I'm like, I know. And they're like, you're one of them. I'm like, am I?
Yeah, I didn't think you realized the influence that you had. You never did. That's one thing I always realized about you. You never realized the influence that you had. You always saw yourself as an outcast, but you weren't. You're one of the key kids in the youth group. You always were. You always were. I think my thing was always if I could transition you to, if I could allow you to, and I was young too, so I probably wasn't able to do this effectively. But I was like, okay, if I get Steven to realize his potential, he really would be one of the key leaders in the youth group. But I think because of your home life and everything that was going on, you weren't able to see that.
And I was at the time, at school, I was bullied mercilessly.
Yeah.
So it's not on you that I couldn't see that. I was just not in a position to where anybody could do that for me. Help me to see that.
And I do that. Me, a lot of it. The interesting thing is this with new leaders and new pastors and stuff. The moment you step into an existing, like I stepped into the youth group, I had zero influence. I had no influence at all, actually. I borrowed influence from the pastors there, and I borrowed influence from you guys because you guys actually had more influence than I did. The longer I got there, the more influence I had, but you really could have tanked everything I wanted to do with attitude or anything like that. And so that's the thing. It's like you actually had significant influence. You just never realized that. But you also cared enough about the youth group, and you liked me for whatever reason early on that you wanted to hang out with me, and it was enjoyable. I remember this moment. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I walked into the apartment that I was living at. There was nothing there. It was the first time I was truly all alone, and I think it was like the first night there or second night there, and you called me, and your family was going to have to eat. You're like, hey, do you want to come eat with us? And I was like, yes, absolutely, I would love to come eat with you. And I came and we ate some. I think it was some barbecue restaurant in town, but I remember that moment of I really felt like, that people cared about me. They cared not just what I could do for the kids, but actually cared about me. And the fact that you guys reached out to me 2 days after I got there to invite me out to eat meant the world to me.
Well, thank you for that, man. I'm glad we did, because that was the start of a good friendship for a while. We don't talk much anymore, but that's just like, I know deep down that if for some reason I ever needed you, you'd answer that phone. Like, it's just we've gone.
You gotta stop changing your number.
Huh?
You just gotta stop changing your number.
I haven't changed my number in a very long time.
Okay.
It probably has changed since you had it, but
yeah.
I'll give it to you. I have zero service up here. I've actually moved up to Kentucky now.
Oh, okay.
So
I drove through Kentucky one time.
It's I live in the middle of nowhere, man. So I decided when me and Chandler got into the fight, I had like an emotional breakdown, and I started missing my cats, because I have a lot of anxiety, depression, and that kind of stuff. And so I have emotional support cats that are still in Georgia until I get my own place. And so I decided I was going to get me some fish to make the room less lonely. I had to drive 30 minutes to go get one fish. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to get a couple more. So I drove an hour and a half to go to a PetSmart. And then this morning they were all dead. But
that is terrible.
It's terrible. But like, I had to drive an hour and a half to go there, 30 minutes to go to a town that might have fish, and they had 3 of them. But like we're in the middle of nowhere here. So I don't think I had a point. I just needed to complain that it's
Live in the
worse.
middle of nowhere.
It's less like Cleveland is more happening than this place.
Wow, that's saying a lot because I thought Cleveland was a ghost, not ghost town, just a tiny blip on the radar. I was like, and I did ask myself, like, God, why did you bring me up here to Cleveland, Georgia? But it really was. I think it kind of allowed me to explore who I really deep down inside. Uh, that there's that country element of me that I enjoyed it.
I
It's how I didn't go
remember.
fishing as much, but now like I love fishing and I love outdoor stuff and
I
so
remember you thought we were so weird. Wednesday after church, yo, I think it was the first Wednesday you were there, maybe the second. Like, yo, Laron, want to go walk around Walmart with us?
I was like, yeah, we went to go get pizza down. We drove 20 minutes to the Coochie to get pizza, the tavern. And then you're like, oh, let's go to Walmart. I was like, for what? You're like, just walk around. I was like, yeah, that's where the party's gonna end for me.
But
Gonna
that's
go
where the
walk around
party
Walmart.
starts in Cleveland, man. You go to Walmart, run into everybody and your cousin.
Yeah, I think that was actually what the Walmart had just been built the year before I
Yeah,
got there, right? Yeah. So when I got there, it was a small town. So when I got there, I came to interview, and there was Burger King, McDonald's, Zaxby's was the only thing, and Sonic was the only thing there. And you guys knew I hated McDonald's and Burger King. So I was like, well, I guess Zaxby's and Sonic. So the first week I got there, the first Sunday I got there, Zaxby's had burned down, and it had rained for the next month, just torrential downpour, and Sonic just fell into the earth. So all I had was McDonald's and Burger King. And I was like, oh dear God, this is just what? Why did you forsake me? Why am I up here?
why have you? I can imagine it felt like that, man.
Yeah, and so, but I had to venture out, had a lot of country cooking, a lot of country food, and did a lot of driving. To go to Dawsonville or go to Habersham. So it wasn't, but all in all, like I mean, it really was. I mean, like I wouldn't trade those 3.5 years for anything, and I would relive them because they were fun. They really were. Some things I would probably do better as a youth pastor, but all the silly things and all the things that we broke in the church that my pastor never knew about or found out later, I was still do again.
Dude, you were the coolest guy around at the time. Anytime we'd take a youth trip anywhere, we was hitting up the Smoky Mountain Knife Works.
Yeah,
Get us some
that was one of
swords.
those moments of like, uh, I came back and the pastor at the church was like, it was one of those like misbelief. He was just kind of laughing at me because I allow you guys to buy. I was like, okay, they're country kids. They're used to having knives. So like they can buy a knife. I didn't expect you guys to buy swords. And so, here come, Jared out of the van when we got back and he pulled out this like, I think it was like a 3.5 foot sword or something like that. Just ridiculous sword out the back of the van. And I was like, where else can you let a bunch of teenagers go to a knife store and buy a bunch of knives and swords and not be, a lawsuit or you get fired?
But it was some beautiful times, man. But anything else going on or questions you want to ask, like about today's times?
No, it's I don't know who all would watch this, or does watch it,
I
um,
guarantee you,
or,
when
or
I share
who.
this, everybody from that youth group that you used to hang out with, they're clicking on this.
Yeah, but it's like whoever's deciding it. It's one of those things that it's. I will say this: I was reading this book, man, and in the book, it talked about, it's kind of talking through legacies and stories, and it talked about the stories that we're all living a story. Every decision that we make is adding to the story of our life, and and the question was, what story do you want to be told about your life? And so, for my wife's grandfather's funeral, I said that at the very end. I was like, look, we all live a life, and we all have decisions and choices to make, and it's all leading up to a story. And so, what is that story that you want told about you? Man, this one time I knew this person, their name was so and so, fill in the blanket, and then they go on from there. And so that's the thing I would encourage people to do is like, hey, just like we said about the family in the beginning, of like, if there's a way that you want to live, just decide today to live that way. Decide today to make those decisions, little decisions every day, to become who you want, who you admire. If you want to be generous, make decisions every day to be generous, to be a person that tips well, to be a person that gives away money to other people. If you want to be a person that always is available and opens up their home, be that and find ways to do that. So that's my encouragement to whoever's listening is there's a story being told about you. So live your life well, live your life for the benefit of other people, and not yourself.
Very wise last words. Thank you for coming on the show, Laron.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for the invitation. It was my honor to get to reminisce and live some nostalgia and talk about punk rock, and this is where life is now. And I pray for the next fish that you have, that they don't meet the same fate as your last one.
Yes. And quick little warning here. There is a not so friendly word in our outro, but I will have edited that by the time. I just didn't reload a new one yet.
It's hard.
So
I'm a guest on your show.
Huh?
I'm just a guest on your show.
But you might enjoy the song played by Ben and Caleb Sosby.
Oh.
And this has been the Confound Millennial, starring Steven Stirvin Michaels and special guest, my buddy Laron October.